My mom changed my wedding cake behind my back and doesn't know that I know. What should I do? My fiance and I get married this fall, and the cake has been a huge point of contention with my mom. Long saga, but the gist is that we wanted a dessert bar or cheesecake instead of a traditional cake. My mom initially insisted on having at least a small cake for just us to cut. We compromised and got quotes. Right before we put a deposit down, she decided that having just a cake for us and not for guests is tacky, so we needed to get a sheet cake to serve as well. We were annoyed because she was the one to suggest it, so we cut our losses and opted to do tiered cheesecake and mini cheesecakes, as we originally wanted. My mum would not let this go for the past 6 months. She then decided to focus on pushing for a groom's cake. My fiancé did not want one. When I told her this, she said it's really only a groom's cake in name and not about what he wants. I told her a firm no multiple times because she wouldn't give up. That brings us to this week. I got a text yesterday saying that she was at the bakery and paid for the order. I got surprised because I never included her in those communications. I called the bakery today and was told by a very apologetic employee that my mom had added a multi-tiered groom's cake with different fillings, flowers, the whole kit and caboodle. We still have cheesecake, but I feel like it'll look silly next to what is essentially a wedding cake. My question now is, what do I do? She doesn't know that I know. I'm furious and hurt. And obviously it's just a cake, but it's not really about that now. She went behind my back and crossed multiple boundaries after I told her no. Am I being a bridezilla for not letting her have her traditional wedding cake? In the comments, Knitinator says, cancel it. Cancel it now and give all your vendors a password that must be given before any changes are made. Acidic Talk says, change the delivery location to a shelter or food bank. I was gonna say change it to your mum's house. It's her cake, let her have it at her house. Why should she have a cake at your wedding? If you don't want a cake, just charge the order back and call it a day. And add a password for all of your vendors moving forward so that changes can't be made without it. And OP says, everyone I've spoken to has either been in the camp of, well, they're paying for the wedding, or not her wedding, not her cake. I think that's why I'm torn, because yes, they are paying, but changing the order behind my back? I'm more upset about the violation of trust than the actual cake, I think. Stem of Sage replies, I see your dilemma, but helping to pay for a wedding does not come with decision power. It should be a gift so that you have the wedding that you and your partner want. Only you can decide when the gift is no longer a gift and instead is a burden. But I would definitely have a conversation about how grateful you are for their support, but that their money is helping your wedding dreams come true and not anyone else's. Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm in the camp of not their wedding, not their choice. Your wedding, your choice. Unless it was previously discussed, and unless everyone agreed to this, there is no reality where that is the only camp to be in. And as it turns out, it's not her wedding, and there was not a discussion before this. So I don't care what your mum's reasons are, she did wrong here. She knows that she did wrong, the bakery staff know that she did wrong. She's an absolute asshole for going behind your back and changing everything when you've explicitly said no. Does your mum not understand consent? Does she not know that no means no, no matter what? I don't know, I'm pissed off at your mum. I don't like her. You need to sort her out right now, like, you can't let her take over your wedding, that's unacceptable. And now, on to the update. Hello again. A big thank you to everyone who gave advice on my original post. I'm now married and had the best, most relaxing honeymoon with my now husband without any pesky family bothering us. By the time I posted, it was too late to cancel the wedding due to deposits and contracts, so it continued as planned. And to clarify, yes, my parents did pay for the wedding, although my husband and I made it clear several times that we didn't expect or need them to pay for everything. No, I don't think them paying excuses my mum's actions. My parents reiterated that it was our wedding and we should do what we wanted. Clearly, the cake was the exception to this, though she had previously said to get cheesecake if that's what we wanted. My husband and I got a laugh out of everyone's suggestions for how to handle the cake. Initially, I wanted to go the petty route and surprise my mum by calling the bakery to change the cake design to something that she would find tacky that would reflect my husband's hobbies. You know, like a groom's cake should do. After taking a few days to weigh my options, I knew my desire for petty satisfaction would nuke my relationship with my mum, which had truthfully never had this dynamic up until wedding planning. I knew that she absolutely was the one in the wrong and acting like a child. And while I'm the actual child in the relationship, I wanted to be mature and handle this like an adult, if only for my own moral high ground. I communicated with my parents and listed all the reasons why this situation, and others throughout the wedding planning process, was hurtful and completely out of line. Shock of the century to everyone on Reddit, I'm sure. It didn't go well. There was a series of texts I received from my mum that demonstrated she couldn't take accountability or comprehend that I wasn't mad that she ruined my wedding by ordering a cake, but rather that she went behind my back, knowing that it would surprise and upset me on my wedding day. I attempted multiple times to redirect to the actual issue, with little success. We ended the conversation with her apologizing for a cake, making my husband and I so upset. This obviously wasn't a genuine apology or the main issue, even if she thought it was. She also agreed to move the groom's cake to a meal that we had the day before the wedding, which I was fine with. At this point, we were a week out from the wedding, and the thought of continuing to press the issue was too much for me to handle with everything else on my plate. I dropped the rope leading up to the wedding so that I could refocus on enjoying my wedding as best as I could. I interacted with my mum as little as possible the day of, and our wedding planner and coordinator did a fantastic job being a buffer. While I've had some contact with her since, it has dramatically declined, so I can get some much-needed space. Obviously, we'll need to have some tough conversations, but I'm choosing to spend my time with my new husband and getting back into therapy first. Weddings, man, they really bring out the crazy in people. Oh, and the cheesecakes were a huge hit, by the way. In the comments, Mrs. Neville Bardos says, "I'm glad you had the day that you wanted and enjoyed your honeymoon. Unfortunately, although previously this wasn't the dynamic you had with your mother, the fact that she refused to see her error and wasn't apologetic, if I were you, I would bear that in mind for the future, i.e., other major events, children, etc., and plan accordingly." Landison507 says, "It'll likely rear its head again if and when you talk to her about respecting your parenting boundaries, if that's a thing that you plan on doing." OP says, "Oh, absolutely. The lack of respecting boundaries/breaking trust for future life events was actually something that I pointed out in our conversation. She didn't seem to understand the point I was making, just kept going back to the cake and not the deeper issue." Finance Mum asks, "Is your mum going through a change of life? I remember my mother was slightly delusional for a few years, and my children have assured me that I was nicknamed the Dragon for a while." OP says, "Yes, actually. While it doesn't excuse it, that's definitely a factor here, and why I wasn't willing to immediately blow up the relationship." Finance Mum replies, "My mum accused my father of cheating, employed a private detective to follow him. It really affects some people. I'm glad you enjoyed your wedding. These memories are so important." And now on to the 1-year update. People have reached out for an update, and coincidentally, I've had several friends get engaged who have similar family dynamics as mine. I've shared all of this with them, but I feel the need to blast this out online too. Now that I'm a year out, I can acknowledge that I love my husband and our life together, but having a traditional wedding was a big mistake. When I think back on our wedding day, I'm devastated to admit that the few emotions I remember from the day were not how much I love my now husband and excitement over our future together, but anxiety over my mum and where the shit was about to blow up. If you're recently engaged and having difficult family relationships, or aren't completely sold on shelling out a ton of money on a wedding, please let this be yet another loud voice yelling at you. Have a courthouse wedding. Don't invite problematic guests. Do whatever you want to do, but for the love of God, avoid that family drama at all costs. I wish I would have stuck to what I originally wanted, eloping somewhere abroad, but alas, I made my decision and have to accept it." What I didn't mention in my initial posts was that my relationship with my mum immediately and irrevocably changed as soon as I became engaged. Even though I knew she could be a lot, I had no idea what I was in for. If I could do it all again, I would have stopped that wedding planning train in its tracks after the first few signs of craziness. The cake was, unsurprisingly, just the last straw of craziness that happened. The great hits include telling literally, and I mean literally, everyone she knew that we were getting engaged less than 10 minutes after my husband told my parents he planned to propose. That is diabolical. Jesus Christ. Upon sharing the proposal photos with her, commenting on how big I looked in the photos, which are, to this day, ruined for me. Told a family member, who commented on how beautiful I looked at a pre-wedding event, yeah, well, she's gained a lot of weight. What is wrong with this woman? Tried to crash my first look the day of the wedding, and then acted hurt that she wasn't invited. Did crash my first look, and then threw a fit when my wedding coordinator wouldn't let her in. Made the wedding all about how she never had a say in anything, and that I was the controlling, immature one. We do still have contact today, but it's limited, and I'm very guarded with what I choose to share. She never genuinely apologized or acknowledged the stress and hurt that she caused. Short of some major changes on her part, I don't see that happening. So yeah, moral of the story is to absolutely soak up the fresh excitement of getting engaged, but seriously, ask yourself if there's anyone in your life who will make wedding planning hell on earth. If you are oh so fortunate to have a character like that, have a plan to handle it, and be prepared to enforce those boundaries. And for the extra crazy families out there, maybe just elope. In the comments, Grace Stranger Than You says, people really do lose their minds over weddings. It's completely baffling. Nancy Neurotic says, I find that older people hit a point where they start to de-evolve backwards towards childishness and immaturity. My parents were incredibly self-centered, unreasonable, and stubborn in their last years. I don't think that they were this way growing up, but maybe in weaker doses. It was like talking to toddlers who didn't understand reality and only wanted what they wanted, and no one else's feelings or input mattered. My friends and I talk about how our parents all devolved into teenagers at around 73. Peter says, but where is the cake? I want to know about the cake. Erratic Bear says, from one of the replies in the latest updates, I mentioned it in my last post, but it might have been kinda buried. The cake was used at another pre-wedding event, but didn't appear at the wedding. Very few people actually ate it at the event, in solidarity with me, but also because it was a very weird thing to have there. Pride of Cape Town says, I would have told the bakery to deliver it to a local soup kitchen instead of the venue. Poor OP doesn't realize her mum is going to crank it to an 11 as soon as grandkids enter the chat. Yeah, I think so too. And that's probably why OP is keeping such a gigantic leash on that woman. Just keep her as far away as possible, keep her as ill-informed as possible. And I'd imagine if grandkids come into the picture, you know, she's going to learn from her wedding what to do this time to stop that crazy behavior. At least I hope so. I mean, maybe it's going to be a few years until we get that update, but I'm very keen to hear if and when that happens. And you know, much like parents causing a scene at school graduations and everything, you don't notice just how tainted those days become until like a year or years later, and you think back and you're like, all I can remember is the ass-hattery of my parents or my significant others, my loved ones, making the day about them. So I completely relate with OP in that regard, and that's why it's so important to have boundaries and enforce those boundaries. And if you're going to have a wedding, have security so that you can deal with problems on the spot. I wonder if security would have stopped that mother from ruining the wedding day. Regardless, thank you for sharing the story with us, OP. I very much appreciate it. And I'd love to know what you guys think down below. Our next post is by user Midnight Barber, and it's titled, I'm having a sleepover with guys tomorrow. Is it weird? I'm autistic and I often forget about social norms and stuff. I'm 17 female, and I'm having a sleepover with a few guys who are 17 to 18 tomorrow just to watch horror movies. I didn't intend for it to be just them, but none of my girlfriends could come because of various reasons. My parents weren't thrilled about hosting a sleepover with just them, because we're all sleeping in one room, but they agreed to it because they know that I'm not interested in any of them. I've known them all for years, and had a sleepover with one of them before. I also dated one of them when we were 15, but I broke it off after a few weeks. Overall, we're all pretty good friends, and that's all I want, a fun sleepover with my friends. It literally just clicked with me that they might interpret this as something different. Will they? I know Reddit is male-dominated, so tell me, if you were one of those guys, would you expect anything else to happen? Should I clarify with them beforehand that it's just a sleepover, or am I overreacting? Edit. For additional details, as of right now, 2 of us will take the couch, 1 takes the recliner, and 1 sleeps on the floor. I will probably take the recliner. The room isn't my bedroom, it's the sitting room, and it's very close to my parents' bedrooms. If I feel uncomfortable, I'll leave them to sleep there and I'll sleep in my bedroom. Also, what I mentioned about last sleepover was like 2 minutes of very tame drunk messing around with one of the guys, but I changed my mind and he stopped, and we both agreed to move on the next day because we're chill like that. He's very respectful, and I've known him since I was a kid. Honest to God, I trust him more than my brother. Edit 2. For a little more additional detail, there will be no alcohol or drugs involved at all. I should also mention that the other guys are all also autistic or similarly neurodivergent. I'm not going to get taken advantage of intellectually, and the notion that I would be is a little insulting. In the comments, Immediate Outcome says, I'm a guy. From my perspective, if time rewound and I was 17 to 18 and were in this position as one of the guy friends, I would think in my head, oh yeah, totally, we really are just friends. Can't wait to go and chill and sleep over with my homies. But in the back of my head, I'll also unintentionally think, but try to suppress the contradictory thought of, it'd be cool if I got some action from my one female friend. I believe 90% of guys, even the ones who try to be genuine friends with girls, will have the second thought in their heads if they were ever to be in this position. Likely something to do with just how the male brain is biologically wired. Televangelist says, bottom line, your friends are human. There's probably some weirdness in their brains because there is in all of us, but they'll hopefully try to do right by you. Yeah, you can't help how your brain is biologically wired. I mean, those are just the staring into the void thoughts, are they not? We have them, but we suppress them, we don't act on them. Especially if the rest are all neurodivergent as well. Like, I don't think that they're gonna be doing those things. I think you guys already have established boundaries, and I think your parents, expect you to respect those boundaries and trust you not to get up to any funny business right next to their bedroom. So I'd say, OP, you are overreacting to this one a little bit, but I understand the hesitation. And now, on to the updates. So here's an update about the sleepover for those who wanted it. It just ended and everyone's left now. So fortunately, for anyone who was genuinely concerned for me, 2 girls ended up coming. It was a last-minute decision, so they were a few hours late, but even without them there, I somehow survived. Overall, it was a great night. We watched a good few absolutely horrific movies. We ate a bunch of shit and laughed obnoxiously loud and snuck out of the house for a midnight walk. There was no drugs or alcohol involved, apart from vapes because some of my friends are addicted. And most importantly, for some of y'all, I slept in my room. It was more for convenience than anything, and also because the 2 girls wanted to sleep up there, and I didn't want anyone sleeping in my room without me present. I'm kind of glad I did because the sitting room absolutely stank this morning. I did doze off in the sitting room with just the guys there while the girls were already sleeping in my room, but they just woke me up and made me finish watching the movie with them because they're assholes. I'm confident that it would have went fine even if it had just been me and those guys. They are chill. Thanks to everyone who left kind and reassuring comments. I was only ever a bit nervous that the vibe would be weird, but it wasn't. I'm not even going to address the wide variety of other comments I got, but rest assured, I stopped reading them after I started getting threatening DMs. Love this website. In the comments, Tom Potom says, one of the greatest things in life is having friends you can trust. Looks like you have a good bunch there. Aura Mistress says, Kudos to the parents for trusting their daughter and still allowing the sleepover. Pretty sure they low-key kept an eye out while providing their daughter with freedom to relax and to be a teen. She has a solid group of friends and is establishing really healthy and balanced interactions with boys and girls. Sounds like the sleepover was a blast. No description says, "I'm happy everything went well, and Opie's comments about the stinky room made me cackle. I can only imagine the smell of a group of teenage boys the morning after, sleeping all in one room. I don't envy what her parents faced the next morning. Hopefully everyone pitched in with cleaning up." And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.